Dear colleagues, I'm happy to welcome you to the webinar, Scholars with Refugee Background, How to Create Sustainable Career Paths. My name is Sini. I'm from the Finnish National Agency for Education, EDUFI. I will be chairing this session today. This webinar is organized as part of Horizon 2020 Science for Refugees project called Guiding Refugees via European Exchange and Training, GREET. This GREET project is coordinated by a consortium, including Academic Cooperation Association ACA, German Academic Exchange Service DAAD, and us EDUFI. This is the third and final webinar of the webinar series organized by the project. The first two webinars, if you didn't have the chance to join them live, the first one was focusing on the role of European higher education community in the integration of highly skilled refugees, and the second one was focusing on the students with refugee background entering the job market. And they are now available as recordings on our project website, so you can access them there. And also this webinar will be available as a recording after the event. Today we are focusing on one of the very central issues linked to all scholarship schemes providing support for threatened, at-risk scholars to continue their career in a safe environment, namely the post-scholarship options and perspectives of creating sustainable career paths. The question of the long-term career perspectives plays an essential role in overall success of these support measures, as the scholarship is always limited only to a certain time period. On the other hand, a permanent position at the university is not a given to any scholar pursuing an academic career today. Scholars face a variety of career path options, including also options to work on other sectors. Today, to discuss on how to tackle these issues and what kind of support has proven to be successful, we have an impressive panel of experts working in this field, representing the leading organizations globally providing support measures for threatened scholars, as well as a scholar who has been successful in building a sustainable academic career in Europe. So now it is my time to introduce our speakers. First, we have Senior Advisor Olga Gregorian from the Institute of International Education Scholar Rescue Fund, where she is heading Partnerships for Scholar Advancement, PSA, a network of organizations and individuals committed to assisting displaced scholars in their career advancement and professional development during and after their fellowships. Then we have Sarina Rosenthal, Senior Program Officer for Protection Services at Scholars at Risk, where she assesses applications for assistance from potentially at-risk scholars and works with scholars and universities to seek placements within the Scholars at Risk network. And with our third speaker, there is a change concerning the speaker from the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation's Philipp Schwartz initiative. Dr. Barbara Sheldon cannot unfortunately join us today, but we are happy to welcome Frank Albrecht, who is a program director at the Philipp Schwartz initiative, to join us. Our fourth speaker is Einstein senior scholar, Dr. Tuba Inal-Cekic. She has been a visiting fellow in Humboldt-Universität to Berlin and at the Cooperatives Institute. She has also worked in the research team of Horizon 2020 project on participation in mobility-related projects. Her research interests are focused on urban movements and urban commons from a participatory planning perspective. And just before I give the floor to our experts, I have a few technical remarks. So the duration of this webinar is 1.5 hours. And you as a participant have the opportunity to send comments and questions via chat during the entire webinar. But please note that we have reserved time to discuss these questions and comments at the end of the webinar, after our four speakers have held their presentations. But now it is time to start, and I give the floor to our first speaker. So Olga, the floor is yours.
Here I am. Can you hear me and see me?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Good afternoon to everybody and good morning to me in America. My name is Olga Gregorian, and I'm a senior advisor at Institute of International Education Scholar Rescue Fund. Institute of International Education is an international NGO that has for 100 years promoted international education as a way to achieve interconnected and peaceful world. Scholar Rescue was, from the beginning, at its core, through assisting displaced scientists and scholars after First World and during and after Second World War, and through many conflicts and crises that happened since. In 2002, IIE committed to making Scholar Rescue a permanent part of its work. So Scholar Rescue Fund was established as a fellowship for scholars whose lives are in danger anywhere in the world to go somewhere else in the world where they can continue to teach, research, and study in safety. It is initially a one-year fellowship with possibility of extension to another year. So far, Scholar Rescue Fund has placed almost 800 scholars from 59 countries in partnership with 400 host institutions in 44 countries. We at Scholar Rescue Fund recognize that in recent years, a very important number of scholars we place are not able to return to their country of origin and have to stay and reestablish their careers for longer term in their host country. Therefore, we realize that tailored assistance and resources are needed to help fellows prepare for the fierce competition that they're facing post-fellowship. In 2017, IIE Scholar Rescue Fund launched the Partnerships for Scholar Advancement, which is a network of partner organizations and individuals committed to providing our fellows with opportunities for career advancement and professional development during and after the fellowship. PSA connects partnering scholars to opportunities through a network of institutions and individuals across academic, nonprofit, and corporate sectors. The institutions who are partners, among others, are National Academy of Science and AAAS, who help us promote our work and also help us recruit more individual partners. Midwest Political Science Association and American Academy of Religion, among other academic societies, offer free membership and attendance to conference for our scholars. We partner with Coursera through their program Coursera for Refugees. They are offering free access to all their content to our scholars, current fellows and alumni. Two law firms, Atkingham and Wilkie Farr & Gallagher, offer pro bono legal advice to our scholars. We partner with many NGOs that do similar work as us, such as Upwardly Global and Talent Beyond Boundaries, ICTC from Canada, and Global Young Academy. Global Young Academy provides mentors to our scholars from their membership, to our scholars and to SAR scholars. In Europe, we collaborate with GREET, of course, and also with Bridge program. Bridge offers localized guidance to refugee researchers in the European research area. But most important are our individual partners who do offer their expertise and advice to our scholars through advisorships. Advisorship is one-on-one relationship between advisor and our fellow with the purpose of supplementing the fellow's efforts in career advancement and professional development. Advisorships are among the most effective ways for displaced fellows to work through impediments to their securing long-term position and opportunities in academic and related sectors. Advisors' roles are different, and among others are assisting with editing CVs and cover letters and conducting mock interviews. The advisors can also review teaching statements, grant applications, postdoctoral applications, and other academic writing. Advisors provide career advice and guidance. They introduce fellows to discipline-specific connections that extend their networks. Advisors can bring attention to academic fellowship, publishing opportunities, and job postings in the fellow academic field. Advisors can help fellow build his or her academic presence by sharing information about relevant conferences and memberships in academic societies. So working with scholars for about 2 years directly, we have learned that those scholars who manage to reestablish their careers in exile have some things in common. And those things are, first of all, the legal status. The scholar's legal status is resolved or in process of being resolved, which allows scholars to work legally in the host country. The scholar can read, write, and speak an advanced level in the target language. He or she also submits academic articles, books, book chapters, book manuscripts for publication in the target language. The scholar has a clear vision of the future. So he or she knows what goals he or she wants to achieve and has a clear vision of path forward. He or she knows that to apply for fellowship and research and teaching position is aware of potential obstacles and is ready to work to find a way to overcome them. The scholar is optimistic but realistic and prepared to move to an alternate plan if the first path is not possible. The scholar is mindful of all the possibilities. The scholar is mindful of the possibility that it will take longer than 2 years on the fellowship to attain his or her goal. It is important to recognize this early in the fellowship, develop a vision of where the scholar sees himself or herself in the next 5 years, and do as much groundwork and planning during the fellowship so that the essential aspects of reaching that goal are well established. The scholar frequently attends meetings and events related to his or her work, and most importantly, stays in touch with new contacts who offer help and connection. The scholar accepts additional responsibilities and pursues extracurricular opportunities that have the potential of bring professional advancement, extend his or her network, and ultimately lead to employment. I would like to give you a short story about one of our scholars who was invited to participate in this webinar, but unfortunately could not make it because he had to travel. His name is Ahmed Sadidin, and he is IISRF alumnus from Syria. He is an agronomist who undertook SRF fellowship from 2013 to 2016 at the University of Florence. Post-fellowship, he was consultant with FAO, Food Agriculture Organization in Rome, and he recently became a staff economist at FAO's regional office in Cairo. Ahmed says that the way he got his first engagement with FAO was through a connection. Networking, in his opinion, was the key to success, and nowadays is an essential skill without which no one will be successful, regardless whether you are displaced or living and working in your country. I have now given you some overview of what we have accomplished through Partnerships for Scholar Advancement, but I would like here to mention a couple of points that we have not managed to develop so far. Those are, first of all, psychosocial support, trying to organize access to counselors who have experience working with refugees and immigrants. We are trying to work with our host universities and encourage them to be more engaged with our scholars, preparing them for post-fellowship through their career services and other services that exist on campus. And we would like to develop more partnerships with private sector and startups. So this would be a short overview of what we do so far. I do welcome your questions. Just to end my presentation, for what it's worth, for those participants who are themselves refugee scholars, I would like to share a little bit of my story. I was a second-year student refugee from Bosnia, and by a turn of fate, I ended up in Spain, in Madrid, in 1993. I did not know any Spanish, and I did not have any friends or family who could help me. But I managed to get into Complutense University without having any university transcripts because they were impossible to get, as my university was on the Sniper Alley, so nobody could get to it to get my transcripts. And I also did not have to do the entrance exam. What happened was that I told my story to people and they decided to help. They decided to help because I was so determined to succeed, and also because I never assumed that because of what I went through, that I'm entitled to anything. So they saw in me the drive and the positive attitude, and that motivated them to help. I really never had to ask. So I always say I'm where I am because of kindness of strangers, and that is very true. So please, any questions are welcome. I'll try to answer them all, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Olga, so much for this overview of Scholar Rescue Fund activities in this field, and also sharing this very personal perspective of this issue. And I just remind the participants that please do send your questions already via chat. We will then raise them at the very end of the webinar. And now we continue with Scholars at Risk. Sarina, so please, the floor is yours. You can take over the presentation and continue.
All right. Thank you, Sini. Can you hear me? All right. Well, thank you so much for that introduction. My name is Sarina Rosenthal, and I'm a Senior Program Officer with the Scholars at Risk Network, which is based in New York City. I'll start by giving a brief overview of the network and the work that Scholars at Risk does, and then talk more intently about how we work with scholars and the ways that we endeavor to help them become successful in their academic careers in new locations. Scholars at Risk is a network of over 500 institutions in higher education in 39 countries. We also have 12 national sections that are organized regionally to share best practices and to work together to support each other in supporting scholars and advancing the work of Scholars at Risk. This map details some of the notable events within the network, including the launch of SAR Europe this year, the ways that we support scholars, our advocacy efforts, and more. So Scholars at Work's mission is to protect threatened scholars and promote academic freedom. And this presentation will focus largely on our work with scholars, but I want to tell you a little bit about our three areas of work: protection, advocacy, and learning, because they all build upon each other and inform one another as we do our work. So protection is the team that I work on, and it's the core of Scholars at Risk work. It's how we work with academics who have faced threat in their own countries and can't continue to do their work in safety. And then we work with a network of universities to create temporary short-term positions of academic refuge so that scholars can continue their important work. Our advocacy team reports on threats to academic freedom globally and threats to individual scholars. They identify, document, and take action on these issues through a variety of programs like their legal clinics, the Academic Freedom Monitor, student advocacy seminar, and their annual report, the Free to Think report. And then lastly, our research and learning team is the team that engages higher education institutions in discussions of global issues related to academic freedom and university values. It's really a way to help universities think about ways to prepare in advance of incidents related to academic freedom and university values, and to engage intentionally on those discussions. We have created a massive open online course called Dangerous Questions, and the next launch will be on April 15th if anyone wants to join and take part in that important discussion. So like I said, this presentation will focus a lot on our protection work and the work that we do with scholars. This graphic demonstrates the full trajectory of our work with academics, both from the point of application to the point of graduation, when a scholar has achieved a level of self-sufficiency and stability to support themselves in their career. Here you can see that in the past year, we received 521 applications from scholars seeking assistance based on the threats that they had received in their country and their inability to continue their work. And it shows the full trajectory from the types of services that we're able to provide to scholars, ranging from placement assistance in the network to create teaching and research opportunities in safe locations, to more advisory services like support for reviewing academic materials like CVs, preparing scholars for interviews, writing letters of support for their independent applications, and more. All of the scholars that we work with have unique backgrounds and unique needs when they're in a new placement within the network. And so the types of advice and guidance we provide to the best of our ability are individualized and intended to support scholars in their efforts to continue their career wherever that may be. So I will return to this graphic because there, I know, is a lot of information here, but I first want to talk a little bit about the demographics of the scholars with whom we work. So the scholars that we work with work in a wide array of academic disciplines. As you can see here, the majority of scholars have backgrounds in social sciences, physical and life sciences, and arts and humanities. And the experience that each scholar has varies. So some scholars that we work with are more junior level, whereas others are more career academics with 20 plus years teaching and researching in their university space. And as such, the support and the guidance and the advice that each scholar needs is dependent upon their experience and what they're looking to do with their career. As you can see here, our caseload is currently over 700 scholars, and that includes scholars who have applied for assistance and are still pending, and those who are open and with whom we're working to create opportunities for academic placements within the network. That means that over the past few years, the need for assistance and the threats to academic freedom and to scholars has risen quite drastically. And so it's never been more important to be having these discussions about the ways that we can help scholars create sustainable opportunities in academia and safety. Last year, we created 124 placements for scholars at 84 different universities. So that's really a testament to the work that's already being done within our network and within the university space. But of course, there's always more that we can do to think about ways to help scholars take advantage of the opportunities that they have when they're in a temporary placement. And here I just wanted to talk a little bit about the demographics of the scholars that we're working with. We provide assistance to scholars who come from over 30 countries. But as you can see here, the majority of the scholars we're currently working with come from Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Iran, and Yemen. To put that into context, of course, the individuals that we work with and the demographics shift based on conflict and changes in country context. But the situation in Turkey has been quite unique in the direct attack to higher education and academics. And since 2016, we've received 988 applications from individuals in Turkey, which is more than double the number of applications we've received from Syria in the history of Scholars at Risk's work. So I share that just to tell a little bit about the scholars that we're working with and how the needs shift over time. So like I said, I want to return to the graphic on the types of support that we provide to scholars. The primary area of our work on protection is to create short-term temporary placements within the SAR network, and what those look like can vary. Some of the positions include teaching, some include research, and the timeline differs as well. We've seen positions that range from a few months as bridge opportunities to 2 years, like the Philipp Schwartz initiative. But on average, the positions within the network are 1 year, and they provide scholars the opportunity to work in a new academic space, to re-engage with teaching or research, and to think about next steps from a position of safety. Throughout the time that a scholar is in a position within our SAR network, we are in constant communication with the scholars and the universities to understand how a scholar is doing, areas of improvement that they see that they need in order to advance within that country, suggestions from the university on how to do so. And then based on those conversations, we try to connect scholars with resources on advancing their academic skills. And those resources can be anything from having more conversations with a faculty mentor, connecting with academic associations, applying for conferences, taking courses on the local language or research methodology, many of the things that Olga mentioned in the previous presentation. We also have an emergency fund that we can tap into to help scholars take advantage of those resources, because we don't want the cost to be prohibitive, especially if it means getting a leg up into future opportunities. So like I said, we provide very personalized advice to each of the scholars, and we try to make our services as flexible and adaptive to the needs of the scholars as possible, because we recognize that a 1-year placement can end very quickly. And so it's important to think about the ways that each scholar can achieve their goals to the best of their ability. It's important to note as well that we don't have a predetermined length for how long we work with scholars. Some scholars have one placement within the network and then are able to find opportunities on their own, although that's less common because we know that academia is so competitive. And others have several follow-up placements, sometimes within the same university, sometimes within the same city, and at times within different countries as well. One thing that we have really begun to focus on is group workshops. And as you can see here, in the last year, we held 4 trainings for scholars with 162 participants, which I'll talk about in the next slide. But the main purpose of all of this work is to really help scholars get to a point where they're comfortable in a new academic setting and have the skills and the tools to be competitive in trying to identify opportunities on their own, whether that's research funding, open calls, or opportunities outside of academia, so that they can be what we consider graduated scholars who are self-sufficient and sustainable in their academic or professional space on their own. And as you see here, 69 of the scholars that we worked with last year were able to graduate from STAR services and support themselves in their new location. So like I said, our scholar and host workshops are one of the programs where we focus specifically on conversations about the ways that scholars can take advantage of the resources available to them within the SAR network and universities when they're in placements, as well as to really talk about transition and next steps and how one scholar can get from being in a SAR placement to being more sustainable. I find these workshops to be particularly important and empowering because it brings scholars together, it brings hosts together, and while we can impart guidance based on the years of work that we've done with scholars, it's also really important to see the way that scholars can share with each other on things that have been challenging, things that have worked, and really do so in a group setting. And of course, that then informs the guidance that we can provide other scholars in the future. On this slide, I've provided a list of some of the sessions that we've provided. Some are provided by STAR staff like myself on making the most of a placement and planning for a transition. Others are provided by graduated scholars who can share their expertise and what's worked for them. And then we always invite someone from the local context who can share about the specific needs and academic landscape, for instance, in Finland or in the United States or in Sweden. that is tailored to the place where the scholars are trying to continue their academic career. Last year, we, like I said, had 4 trainings, and to date, we've done trainings for 253 scholars in total. We will also be creating an online version of this that can make the scholar workshops available to more scholars and to more universities. I wanted to note that in one of the workshops during our elevator pitch exercise for the networking session, a scholar was paired with a university host, and while she was doing her elevator pitch, they learned that there were overlaps in their academic work, and it actually led to the creation of a SAR placement for this scholar, which is not the norm outcome for these workshops, but it is important to note that when scholars take advantage of the opportunities and the resources available to them within our network, they can at times make things or create opportunities that wouldn't have otherwise been available to them. So finally, I just want to talk about some of the areas of importance that scholars have really highlighted as ways to really strengthen their role while in a SAR placement and to set them up for opportunities in the future on their own. And I think the one thing that is overwhelmingly shared with us is that, creating a strong research profile is imperative, especially for scholars who have experienced disruptions to their careers and may not have as many publications as others in the new academic context that they're based in. And so we do our best to share resources to scholars on how to, identify journals and think about research methods and resources for writing and methodology, but we also rely on our university network to share local expertise to help set expectations and to direct scholars to journals, share warnings about predatory publishing and things like that, and at times even connect scholars with co-authors so that they can really create outputs in these short periods of times that they're at SAR network universities. Of course, exposure to new colleagues is incredibly important. Some like to call it networking, others prefer not to use that term, but really creating connections with individuals within your academic space and beyond can be important for building community, but also for learning about the new academic space and new opportunities. One of the scholars that we work with who was able to attain a tenure track position did so in his own words, based on the support that he had from his faculty mentor, who spent an entire summer with him going line by line through his cover letter, through his CV, helping him understand the intricacies of different open calls and the ways to tailor his materials. And he said that prior to doing so, he had submitted 80 applications. And after reworking his materials with the advice of someone who had experience in that academic space, he was able to actually get 2 interviews and 2 offers for tenure track positions. And so we understand that that's not always the case, but it is important to recognize that there are so many resources already within the academic space that one's in during the SAR network and SAR placements that can be really valuable for one's opportunities for advancement. Beyond that, of course, there are specific skills that one can take advantage of, like improving their local language, taking advantage of more teaching opportunities, whether in guest lectures or in new courses, and just having a better understanding of the academic system that you're in, whether it's just your university or opportunities in the country and beyond. All of this is, of course, to help scholars get to a point where they feel that they're competitive and able to apply for opportunities on their own. We recognize that academia is very competitive and that it can be hard to go from these short-term positions to creating something on your own in the independent open call space. But of course, the scholars that we work with have such impressive backgrounds and have so much to offer to the academic environments within our networks. And we just want to do as much as we can to provide individual support to help scholars get to the point where they can be self-sufficient and sustainable. So I'll pause there, and I look forward to all of your questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarina. A lot of very relevant points already with some practical tips, a lot of food for thought, and also for the the discussion after our presentations. So for the questions, I already saw that there were some questions for Sarina in the chat. So Sarina, you can see the questions and then prepare your answers, and we will then raise them at the end after all the presentations. Now we actually continue with the German program, Philipp Schwartz initiative, and there we have Frank Albrecht. Frank, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you very much for having me. I'm happy to talk about the Philipp Schwartz initiative, which has been mentioned a few times. Let me just explain the Philipp Schwartz initiative first, and then focus on the questions at hand for our session today. As an overview of the Philipp Schwartz initiative, what is it? It is a funding program that enables host institutions in Germany, meaning higher education institutions or research institutions, to host at-risk scholars for 2 years initially. It's funded by the German Federal Foreign Office and a number of private foundations. And the logic of this program is a little special, meaning that it's host institutions that are in charge. Host institutions select the scholars that they wish to nominate for Philipp Schwartz Fellowship, and the Humboldt Foundation, my institution, actually provides funding to the host institution, which in turn can grant fellowships to scholars. Now, the effect of that is obviously that it ties in the institution, and as we've heard before, the institution and the academic mentors are just essential in thinking about long-term career perspectives. So what does the Philipp Schwartz initiative funding entail? It's a 2-year fellowship originally, fully funded. Fully funded meaning it's 3,500 euros per month provided to the scholar, and an additional auxiliary funds of 20,000 euros, which are provided to the host institution, but which the host institution is supposed to use for scholars. So for each scholar, they will receive 20,000 euros, which can help build internal structures, support structures for at-risk academics. But mainly the point of those 20,000 is to allow for personalized individual trainings, coachings, taking part in academic conferences, etc. It's very flexible how you use those funds, but they are supposed to be used with the future perspective of the scholar in mind. Originally, as I said, it's 2 years of funding, but there is an option to extend by a 3rd year. The 3rd year is then a co-financing model. So the Humboldt Foundation will provide half of it, and the host institution will arrange for half of it. I'm saying arrange because it doesn't have to be funding that comes from the host institution. It can be funding that the scholar has obtained or the host institution has obtained from a third source. It can also be employment. We try to handle it as flexibly as possible so that there are not too many obstacles, because as we've heard before, 2 years is not a long time to re-establish a whole academic career, and 2 years is not a long time to re-establish a whole livelihood, especially when there are additional challenges such as resident status questions or traumatization and other challenges to overcome, as well as the academic challenges. Right, where are we at the Philipp Schwartz initiative right now? It was launched in 2016, just 3 years ago, and let me just take a moment to thank Sarina and Olga, basically in place of their organizations, because Scholars at Risk and the Scholar Rescue Fund, along with the Council for At-Risk Academics in the UK, have been without the partnership that we've been able to build with them and continue to have with them, the Philipp Schwartz initiative, I'm sure, wouldn't exist in the shape it does today. So thank you very much. Today, 3 years after our launch, we have about 160 Philipp Schwartz Fellows at a little over 70 institutions across Germany. Institutions vary a lot. It can be universities, it can be research institutions. The countries of origin, I think, almost mirror those of that Sarina just explained. So the majority of scholars comes from Turkey, about 58%. From Syria, it's about 30%. But there's a number of other countries of origin that also matter in the Philipp Schwartz context, which is, for example, Burundi, Iran, Iraq, Libya, Yemen, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan. So it's quite a wide range of countries of origin. Now, as I said, we have a 2 years plus 1 year system, meaning that now the first cohort of Philipp Schwartz Fellows has already come to the end of their fellowships or is looking at it and is faced with exactly the questions that were raised here in this context. And here, I think this is, let me explain the model of the Philipp Schwartz Initiative. As I said before, it's the host institutions that are in charge of selecting candidates, nominating candidates, and funding candidates. And within the host institution, it's basically a triangle of actors. Of course, it's the scholar, himself or herself. It's a project lead, which is usually part of the international office frequently, and there's the academic mentor. Those 3 roles are essential and indispensable for this program. And the way the program works is it ties all 3 actors into this, into thinking about long-term perspectives. Now, we don't have too much evidence from scholars who've managed to find placement, post-fellowship placements so far, although there are quite a number of them. What we do see, though, is that it's essential, a few points are essential. Thinking about career perspectives, developing concrete steps towards developing career perspectives has to be an important topic from day one. And not only for the scholar himself or herself, but also for the project lead and also for the academic mentor. Obviously, the project leader within the international offices or somewhere else in the university administration or leadership can provide opportunities such as coachings, trainings. The academic mentor can provide so many things, access to academic networks, to events, to conferences, to methodologies, to resources that the Humboldt Foundation just can't, and the project leaders can't either. So the academic mentor, it's essential to activate all 3 actors, including the academic mentor. But of course, probably the most important actor is the scholar himself or herself, finding out what are the exact strengths that they can provide to their host institution? What are the new perspectives, new research questions, new research methodologies? What is it that they bring into the host institution and into the entire academic discipline or network in Germany? But scholars, we've learned, must be quite realistic. It's been mentioned before, the competitiveness of research systems. It's the same in Germany, as only a small number of people in a postdoc stage will actually reach a stage, a professorship position. So this needs to be discussed openly between project leaders, between academic mentors and scholars. Scholars have to assess their situation and find the suitable opportunities. So what does Philipp Schwartz do to help with all those things? I mentioned in the beginning that we provide some funding It's for the host institutions to allow for all those activities, be it professional language courses, proposal writing training, or providing funds to travel to academic conferences and things like that. We've also founded a Scholars at Risk Germany section, meaning all the members of the Scholars at Risk network internationally, the German members have formed a section in September 2016. It's being coordinated by the Humboldt Foundation, and this network provides an opportunity for host institutions to talk to each other, to exchange knowledge, to exchange best practices. And I think it's quite an active section, and we're really pleased to see that. The other thing that the Humboldt Foundation provides is yearly annual events during which we invite experts from different organizations to provide advice for scholars in the core questions that will prepare them for long-term perspectives. In fact, our conference is just starting on Monday, and Sarina is going to be there. Somebody from SRF is also going to be there. And we're very happy that Scholars Risk is going to do a training just before our event for the scholars that are present there. This year, we've brought the Alliance of Science Organizations in Germany together. The Alliance is basically the 10 most important publicly funded research performing or research funding organizations. And they all work in slightly different segments. There are some that are more working in the technology or applied sciences sectors. There's basic research, of course. We brought those 10 organizations together. They're all sending experts who will provide advice and information for scholars who are trying to orient themselves within the German research system and try to assess their perspectives. But not only within the research system. I think it's quite important to keep in mind that there are options, opportunities outside the research system or adjacent to the research system. It doesn't have to be a researcher position always. It can be in industry, research-focused industry, or maybe a consultancy or advisory services. So we try to keep all those opportunities in mind and to provide information on all those options. Just as an example, some of the trainings we will be providing during our forum, our conference next week, is planning your career and developing opportunities, turning an idea into a job. So founding your own company, applying for funding, and understanding the quite complicated German research system. Those are just some of the things we try to do. What we also try to do, and we cannot repeat often enough, is try to activate the host institutions, the academic mentors, to become active, to network amongst them, each other. Without our help, without our input, what we try to do is provide a platform for this to happen. I hope this was a basis for further questions, and I hope I gave an overview of the Philipp Schwartz initiative and what we're trying to do, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much for providing these perspectives from Germany. As you can see, there is a lot of connections and this network also between these support initiatives and these programs, and we are learning from each other. It's also important to know for the participant that, as for example, potential host institution, there are already lessons learned, and you don't have to be alone with your questions or start your thinking from scratch. But there are these initiatives that already have these lessons learned. But we have now heard from 3 different support programs, their perspectives on this issue, and now I'm Now I'm happy to invite a scholar who has been successful in creating a sustainable career path in Europe, Dr. Tuba Inal-Cekic, to share her experiences and perspectives to this issue. So Tuba, I give you the floor.
Thank you very much. Can you see me and hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Tuba Inal-Cekic, coming from Turkey. From the graphic, you can remember the red one. I'm probably the manifestation of the political crisis in Turkey. I'm from Yıldız Technical University, and I have been working on urban studies since in Yıldız Technical University since 2002. So I have been a scholar since 2002, and academia was my dream job. So I had nothing else to do. I didn't know nothing else to do other than academia. And this is kind of the outline that I will try to just point out in my presentation. This is the route this is my journey to Germany. My journey to Germany started in 2013. I have been here for 3 months as a visiting scholar in Humboldt-Universität, where I am actually now working as a scholar. It was a 3-month scholarship, but it was the beginning of this journey, actually. Because in 2015, in July, the first live bomb exploded in Turkey, and I received a telephone call from my colleague here, where he has been my host professor in that 3 months. So he just offered me to use my sabbatical for a year in Germany, just to see whatever is happening in the country. So my journey again started there. And in 2016, in January, I have signed a petition. It was the reason why I have been in exile, or I have been scholar at risk. After 2016 January, I had been interrogated in Turkey, but until the decision is made by the university and the persecution court, I traveled to Germany in June 2016, and then the political crisis escalated in the country in 2016 July, and the coup had happened. And I have been called back since I have been working in a state university, and as a civil servant, I have been called back because of the state of emergency, but I didn't respond and decided to stay here. And the decision that I have made to stay here was really, I get too much support from Scholar at Risk and in person from Sarina Rosenthal, that has spoken a couple of minutes ago. And in September, after deciding to stay, in September 2016, they provided me a 6-month scholarship from Philipp Schwartz initiative. It was kind of I didn't apply to an institution, or the institution did not apply on me, but it was kind of just substituting someone who didn't come. So that 6 months really saved my life, kind of, because it was the start of my career path in Germany. So then when I come to what happened since then, so I started with being a visiting scholar in Humboldt-Universität, which was my kind of sabbatical, started from June 2016, and then 7 months in Ruhr University Bochum. I have been a PCI fellow until April 2017. But then in the meantime, I have been applying for jobs and for many other things, and also for research projects. from a network of critical geographers, I received a job call, and then I applied for that. It was really, I was lucky that it really fitted my experience and my area of interest, and I applied for this position, and I get the position as an WMI here. It's Wissenschaftsmitarbeiter, which is like research associate, and I started to work as in a team of Horizon 2020, which was really very connected to my interests. It was a mobility-related participatory project, and I have been working in Turkey in participatory planning issues, and I have worked there since from September 2017 until the end of 2018. And then at the end of 2018, I again received an offer from a colleague here in Humboldt-Universität. They were applying for Einstein scholarship for 8 people, but with a contract, not like a scholarship. So I again substituted someone who couldn't come, who couldn't manage to leave the country because of this passport problems in Turkey. So I again substituted another one, but now with a contract, 2-year contract in Humboldt-Universität. So it seems like a success, but I still have problems, of course. We had many challenges at the end. Let me put it in like 5 general title sections. So most of the challenges came from, it's like a general challenge of being a foreigner in a country which you're foreign to the language, to the local language, you're a foreigner to the general institutional settings and foreign to the law, and also you have some personal challenges that I have been a single mom for a while until we managed to bring in my husband, fly in my husband here. So I had to travel to Bochum with a kid. So it was the personal challenge I had. And also there have been, and there are still some structural challenges in the academia, in German academia, which is very different from the academic experience that I had in Turkey. So it's kind of not very open to apply. Or also we had problems with, I have finished my PhD in 2009, which means it's almost 10 years, and it is kind of a challenge, an obstacle to apply many of those research projects, research funds that if you don't have a team already existing in a university, you cannot apply if you have 10-year PhD degree. So it's kind of challenges that I couldn't change, but there were some other challenges. I think I have been successful. So one is networking, I guess. I have to mention it's the most important thing, because I didn't really never stop trying to extend my network within the academia, within the countrymen that I know here who are from the same country. But I have to mention, emphasize that I'm lucky because I'm in Germany, I'm from Turkey, and Germany and Turkey has some 60-year history together. We have been here and migrated here since 1960s. So networking was one of the challenge, but one of the success that I think I have managed. And the other challenge was when you're kind of a scholarship with, for instance, in Ruhr University, I had a scholarship for 6 months. I have been there, but it was really, when you're just short-term temporary scholarship, or have a scholarship in a university or in a department or division, it's really the biggest challenge is joining the team, because you're working on your own, you have a mentor. If the mentor and your area does not really match, the problem then starts, because then you're alone and you have the challenges that I counted in the first 3, general challenges of being a foreigner, the general challenge of the local language, and your personal challenges. You're still seeking for apartment, a new apartment contract, and also challenges that your country is creating every day. And joining the team was, I think, the other success I have managed, because in the Horizon 2020 project, while I was working in the Horizon 2020 project, it was a teamwork. So I think the main success came out of this joining team thing, because now we are working on 3 or 4 articles, writing 4 articles at the same time. I think in this case also the topic and the area we were working on within this urban studies things really matched. It was the, I think, the success measure for joining the team. And the other thing I guess I could mention as a success is taking proactive action. Instead of taking reactive action, yes, we have to learn the local language, but I have to say German language is a bit hard to learn in 2 years, or at least to publish in 2 years. It's not possible. Networking and solidarity within your community with the countrymen, I mean, and also the scholars. And again, I have to say that I was really lucky here in Germany, just getting so in solidarity with my community, with people who already migrated since a while, since 60 years. I was lucky with that. And also, on the other hand, I was also lucky there had been many colleagues. I didn't know them from Turkey, but we have met somehow. So it was the part of networking thing I think we managed. And also, I try to foster and promote all possible collaborations that we can have with my scholars, with the countrymen, and also wherever there are some presentations or seminars, that just to go and show up there, even I'm not presenting, just to show up and get networking. And on the other hand, I think one of the proactive action I managed to take was finding solutions not only for the existing problems, because there are many existing problems, and we saw some potential problems coming also. And what was the proactive action? I just realized that if we are not united as an organization, with an organization, we don't get organized as an only person, as just a refugee yourself, will not be enough to sustain for a future career. So what we have done was, we founded an organization here with some academics from Turkey who are already in exile, persecuted academics. We are, I think, enthusiastic learners and dreamers of a different education system. So some of us were already living in Berlin, in Germany, not just Berlin, living in Germany, and some of us have to move after the political developments in Turkey. So we registered a non-profit association under German law since 2017, and which is really the most exciting part of my career path here, because it also helped we organized, and this is my really most enthusiastic project here, and it's like my kids. So we proceeded under this non-profit association, and we are located in Germany and Berlin, and we offer researchers and students with limited opportunity to move around, because we have many colleagues which are trapped and stuck in the country, cannot move, and because of this passport issues, because of their passport issues, they cannot travel. So we try to provide them some opportunity to participate in online education also to students. And we combine the good old ideal of academic freedom with state-of-the-art of digital communication and collaboration opportunity just provide us, because technical revolution has done this without passport, without countries, without borders. People who wants to engage can really engage. And now, yesterday we announced our new spring semester courses there, and our mission was based on its commitment to peace in the world and living together in diversity. So I hope you can also have a look at the website. You can see the website address of university.com. So this is the enthusiastic project that we had, which excites me more than everything. And also this will provide, we have now 3 staff who is working with us. I'm working in a university, but in case we need some job, there will be some opportunities to give lectures and to do your projects under this organization. So thank you very much for the floor.
Thank you for spreading your enthusiasm, Tuba. Thank you for updating us on the Off-University initiative and sharing your views on this issue. I think that your points that you raised really resonates well with the points that were raised also by the previous speakers. For example, the importance of mentors at the host institution and the importance of networking, but also the proactive role of the scholar, him or herself, were points that were shared in these presentations. But now I hope that Tuba, you will stay with us for the discussion. We have now 25 minutes time reserved for the discussion and questions. And I was thinking that we could start by going through the questions that we have received via chat. And maybe we could start with Olga. There were one question targeting directly Olga concerning the selection criteria for Scholar Rescue Fund program. There was an example of a Yemeni colleague, and the question was what is the selection criteria? And actually, I was thinking that if Olga, you might be, you could also comment on the question concerning South America and especially the Venezuela situation. If that's also, if you look at the origin countries of the scholars applying to your program, if Venezuela is among them or not. So Olga, please, if.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, let me start with the scholars from Latin America. We have had since 2002, 1% of all our scholars were coming from Latin America. In 2018, that was 1.8%. And I am sure it's going to be higher in 2019, as we are receiving many applications from scholars from Venezuela. So in the previous years, what was the countries of origin of the scholars from Latin America have been Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, Haiti, Mexico, and Venezuela. Regarding the question about Yemeni scholars and the eligibility criteria, it is unfortunate that we cannot provide fellowships to all the qualified scholars because we receive so many, and we, as I did not mention it initially, but our system is such that we offer about $20,000 per year per scholar, and the rest of the funding comes from the university. So our funding is limited, and unfortunately is not enough to cover all the qualified scholars. The best way to know whether you are eligible is to send the email to srf@iie.org, and with the initial request for assessment of eligibility, and you will receive a reply, direct reply from one of our staff about whether you are eligible. I mean, general eligibility criteria is to hold a PhD or higher degree in the field, to have recently fled from immediate to severe danger, and you have not been living out of your country for more than 2 years. You demonstrate superior academic accomplishment and promise, and will benefit home and host communities if you do this fellowship. So, but the best way to know exactly whether you are eligible is to send the email to srf@iie.org and request the initial assessment. And all the information is on our website, which is scholarrescuefund.org, and it's in the section for scholars.
Okay, thank you, Olga. Then we could move to Sarina. There were several questions actually targeted to Sarina in the chat. I don't know if you had the chance to go through them, or should I raise them here?
I've had a chance to look through them, so I can try and answer them and take follow-ups if anyone has any. So I guess since we just heard about Latin America, I'll continue on that one and then get to ways to engage more universities and whether someone can apply after the Philipp Schwartz initiative. In terms of Latin America, I think you're right that we have received fewer applications from there and have fewer member universities from Latin America, but we have several initiatives to engage more universities in a variety of the areas of our work. I think similarly, we are seeing more applications from scholars in the past year, specifically from Venezuela and Brazil. We have member universities in Chile, Mexico, and Venezuela. And in the past month, we actually launched our Latin America Advocacy Hub, which brings together members of the higher education community within Latin America that are interested in collaborating and doing research and reporting on threats to academic freedom in Latin America, which is particularly important for the ability to support more scholars there as well, because a lot of the way that scholars learn about our work and about other organizations like SAR is by word of mouth and knowing other scholars that have worked with us. And so I think having more of a presence in Latin America will mean that we'll be able to do more work there. And it's important to note that we also have a push on our membership team to really engage more universities in that space as well. So in terms of that and engaging more universities, so there was a question on the fact that there are some scholars that are interested, some universities that are interested in supporting scholars at risk and others that are not. So it's a good question. Like I said, we have over 500 universities in 39 countries in our network. Some of those universities are in a position to host scholars and others are not. Because in our network, the university is generally the funder of the placement. Some universities just don't have the capacity to create those opportunities, and they can at times engage with our work in different ways, whether that's through hosting a speaker as a scholar as a speaker, engaging with our student advocacy seminars and other programs, or participating in the MOOC and the research and learning work. That said, our membership team is very active in trying to engage more universities in areas where we don't have as much representation, like Latin America and Sub-Saharan Africa, as well as targeting universities that have espoused these views of protecting academic freedom, but haven't yet been brought into the network. And so I think if you have a question about a specific university that hasn't expressed interest in hosting scholars or participating, we'd be happy to have a one-on-one conversation about that, to think about whether there are options or opportunities to engage those universities. And then lastly, the question on whether someone can apply after the Philipp Schwartz initiative. The short answer is yes. We welcome any applications for assistance and do our best to review the information that's provided and to think about the ways that we can support scholars. I will say that given the high number of applications we've received, especially from scholars who are still in country facing direct threats to their lives, we often do have to prioritize those applications for placement assistance. But like I said earlier in the presentation, the services that we offer vary from placement assistance to more advisory services such as career support and trying to provide advice on how to navigate the open call job application and job market. So, we welcome applications. We also welcome emails with questions about eligibility. And I believe some of you will be at the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation Forum next week, where I'll be, and I'm happy to have those conversations one-on-one as well.
Thank you so much, Sarina. I think you covered the questions that were in the chat for you. So I guess that we are continuing with Frank. So there were, to my knowledge, there were 3 questions for Frank. Did you have the chance to go through them in the chat, or should I read them for you?
I think I saw them. Well, first, I saw 2, and maybe I can also talk about, well, let me start and then please help me out if I forget anything. The first question was about the extension. Now, that's a very specific question, and I'd be happy to talk about this individually, of course, also, but maybe as a general information. The question is whether, because it's a co-financing program, a model, and if the host institution cannot actually find the funds to provide their part of the extension, then, as I mentioned before, it's possible to procure other means. It doesn't have to come from the university. It can be it could theoretically even be external employment. It could be any other fellowship or a research or other kinds of funds. So we try to be as flexible as possible, but we cannot forego this co-financing model. So we cannot turn it into a fully funded model. I hope this is just helpful as a general outline, but I'd be happy to have this, to continue this conversation about the specific situation in person or individually. The second question was also about our selection committee and our selection procedure. And of course, I'm happy to talk about that. Our selection committee is independent, meaning, of course, we appoint the members, but they are not part of the Humboldt Foundation staff. They are scientists, scholars within Germany, experts in their fields, and there are also some institutions that bring in an institutional perspective. So the largest German research funder, the German Research Foundation, is part of the selection committee, as well as the German Academic Exchange Service, the DAAD, or the National Academy of Sciences, Leopoldina, just to name a few. The priorities they set when selecting candidates it's actually a constellation. So it's not just academic excellence or just the level of threat somebody is exposed to. In fact, what the Humboldt Foundation does is ask that the host institutions that apply provide proof of the threat, but we do not look at the threat any more closely because we're just not, we think it's more suitable or more sensible to have this question answered before the application procedure actually starts, so whether a threat should be confirmed or not. What the selection committee actually does look at is the academic qualifications so far, of the candidates, but also how well they fit with the envisaged host institution and the envisaged mentor. So the academic fit is a second very important factor. The third factor is how engaged, how committed are the academic mentor and the host institution? Are they really prepared to take a very hands-on approach and be very closely involved and provide real support and assistance? And the last and maybe most important point is, do the academic mentor and the host institution and the scholar have a clear understanding of the challenge of developing long-term perspectives? So exactly, it's exactly about the question at hand today. Does the host institution have concrete steps in mind on how to strengthen the scholar's long-term perspectives? As I said, it has to start on day one, and we actually look at that. And the selection committee looks at that very closely, how concrete and how well thought out those plans are. Now, maybe a few things that the committee does not look at, which is countries of origin. So there's no quotas or anything. It's just about the individual candidate. And as I said before, we do not look at, if I can say it that way, at threat levels. We, the selection committee, just accepts the threat as confirmed or not confirmed, and then it does not play a role in future deliberations. But the third question, I'm just not quite sure which one that was.
Yes, thank you, Frank. I think that it might have been the one concerning the nationality, Turkey.
Oh, yes.
If you have that type of information available.
Yes. So Turkish scholars, and it actually means of Turkish nationality. And I think the way the question was framed, let me just look at it again. When you say that most of the refugees are from Turkey, are they born there or are they just from somewhere else and have the national passport? Well, they have Turkish passports and are Turkish nationals, and usually have come from Turkey either directly or indirectly via affiliations somewhere else, but they're Turkish nationals.
Okay, thank you so much, Frank. There was also one comment for Tuba. I saw that, Tuba, you reacted to it already via chat. So I would suggest that to conclude this webinar, we would have still one round of comments, and I have one question for all the speakers as well. So my question would be that based on what we have discussed today, what would be the one most important thing that should be developed further that you see that is lacking from our support structure at the moment? And if you have any concluding comments for the audience. So maybe we could start with Olga.
Okay. Well, as I already mentioned in my initial remarks, there are a couple of things that we have not been able to establish, and I would say the most challenging one would be psychosocial support for scholars. As we all know, scholars are, they come to a new country where everything is strange and different. They come with the trauma, and so when you add the new environment and all the different challenges that Tuba mentioned, when you add that to trauma, anxiety levels are extremely high. And we heard from many of our scholars that some sort of psychosocial support would have been really useful, because there were times when scholars were extremely anxious and depressed and did not have anywhere to turn to, and because of that, many other things suffered. But so at every single one of these meetings, we do mention the psychosocial support, and we still have not found the recipe to have a successful support in this area. So that would be mine.
Thank you, Olga. What about Sarina?
All right, well, this is not an easy question. I agree with Olga that psychosocial support is increasingly important for the scholars we work with, especially just as a recognition that to be able to be successful in academia, you also have to be able to feel comfortable personally, socially, and professionally. But I think beyond that, the easy answer is time, and I know that sounds silly, but I think dedicating time specifically for research outputs, for networking, for attending conferences that sometimes fall by the wayside when you're just doing your normal academic work in the university space. I think that it's something that we work on a lot with the scholars in universities, to think about ways that really concerted ways that scholars can create academic outputs while they're in a position, and not just feel like, okay, they have a year, they have to really just sit at their desk and power through, but really think about the ways that they can expand from their office to make new connections, like Tuba highlighted the importance of networking, to actually, produce research outputs, and to use that as a way to build a wider network and to know of other opportunities in academia. And so these things are already in place in the university space, which I think is important to highlight, that it's not an impossible task to identify these resources and to connect with them, but sometimes they're not as visible or obvious to scholars who are new to an academic space. And so really making concerted efforts to connect scholars with those resources, to carve out time for those opportunities, and then, to recognize that scholars have both personal and professional needs to be able to feel comfortable and successful in a new space.
Thank you so much, Sarina. Then Frank, any final comments and the question that I read?
Indeed, not an easy question. I think what I really wish for is greater awareness within the German, or maybe the European research systems and the stakeholders within those systems, because it's something that Tuba mentioned earlier, an awareness of the particular situation that scholars are faced with, the challenges that are faced with, and the time that they need to overcome these challenges. But maybe more important, to see the potential and the opportunities that scholars will bring. It's new perspectives, new research perspective, but also regional expertise. They can be a bridge to different regional academic networks, and I think, and also they can play an important role, and they do play an important role already in raising awareness about, for example, the vulnerability of academic freedom that people are just not faced with here today, within Germany at least. So I think they can provide so much for a host institution. It is really a win-win situation, and I think that should be something which I hope will be more widely known. And I know that this very webinar that we're doing is an effort in that direction.
Excellent point, Frank. Then I give the final comment to Tuba.
Thank you. It's really not easy to say the final words, but I think I will keep on saying the same thing. The most important part is getting engaged in the existing community that if you're in Humboldt or any university, in anywhere, getting engaged in the region and the team is the most important part of really starting again to produce or getting into the academia in the new country that you arrived. And I think the other thing I would suggest would be just keep on doing the same thing as you have done in your country is the most important part. I think I love to work as an activist and at the same time as an academician. So what I have done here is just keep on doing the same thing. So I love to be in academia. I love to work on something, and also just doing follow-up activities that you have done and which has been interrupted in your country. So keep on doing that will give you some kind of advantage that you have worked on something. Now you don't have the possibility to reach again your field. I'm an urban planner, so my field and my expert area is in Turkey, and now I cannot reach as an urban planner. You cannot make a field work there, but I keep on working with my previous colleagues in Turkey. So it's the platform and the technology provides everything. That's Skype, and you can do everything. Keep on doing the thing that you have done in your country is the easiest way to start to publish and to publish more. Even I know it's really not easy to start from the first day for publishing, because it's the really personal and general challenges of being abroad is really not good to tackle and not easy to tackle. But anyway, if you start with whatever you have done before, would be easier to have a starting point as a starting point, I guess.
Thank you so much for these reflections. Actually, now we are coming to the end of this webinar. I just wanted to remind you of the webinar recordings, the webinars that were produced by this GREET project earlier, and the upcoming GREET activities, the final seminar, as well as online compendium. I'm happy also to share with you that we are continuing with the GREET consortium with another Horizon 2020 project linking directly to the topic that we were discussing today. The project is called CARE, Career Advancement for Refugee Researchers in Europe. So I hope to be in contact and to collaborate with you also in the framework of that project. We would love to hear your feedback on this webinar. We will be sending soon an online link for you to do that, and there you can also share your good practices that we can include in the online compendium. But now I would like to thank our excellent speakers. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you for the active participation, and have a wonderful day. Bye bye. Thank you so much.